our guest presenter today, who is Fred Gramann, our visiting composer. So let's give
Thank you.
and also welcome to his wife, Nancy, who is also here. So today we are going to hear the premiere of sorts of a commission. It's a commission made possible by the Gordon and Lillian Hardy Music Endowment Fund. Many of you knew Gordon and Lillian, they were longtime members, and the gift they made to the Endowment Fund was for the enhancement of music programming. There's a list of things that they liked and wanted us to consider, and one of them was commissioning. And I had the opportunity to talk to both Gordon and Lillian about this sort of thing, and I gave them the idea that perhaps we could use funds toward simply a text that doesn't have music at all, or it doesn't have any musical settings, or that it can do with a fresh musical setting. And so I thought, well, I sort of do this every once in a while. I perused all the readings for the lectionary year. And I went through and made a little short list, and I took them to Jenny, we looked at them, and we settled on two options, including one of the lectionary readings from today, which is from the prophet Micah. It's a very well-known text, but has very, very few musical or choral settings of it. And so I thought this is where perhaps our guest, Fred Gramann, can step in. I've long admired Fred's choral music. We've done a number of his pieces here at MAPC over the years. And Fred, just for a little biographical information, is a native of Washington State. Went to Syracuse University and University of Michigan, where he got organ and performance degrees. And then he went to Paris, supposedly for 9 months, to study with one of the greatest 20th century organists of the French tradition, Marie-Claire Alain. And he studied with her for 2 years.
Actually 5 years in all. I was a slow learner.
And while he was there, he was appointed music director of the American Church in Paris, and he has been there ever since. He's been there now in his 44th year.
Yeah, I'm working on 44.
Which is amazing and extraordinary and all kinds of different things all at once. This is a wonderful thing. And so Fred is widely published. A number of his works are published by E.C. Shermer, and in fact, the piece that you'll hear today is going to be published by E.C. Shermer of Boston, so it will be available to everyone. And when I reached out to Fred, I was delighted that he was interested in doing this, and I sent him biblical readings. I sent him the Micah text. But I also was thinking, I knew that Fred had written a lot of strophic pieces arranged in verses, and I thought, well, there's a wonderful hymn text based on this text called What Does the Lord Require? And I sent that to him as well. It's written by a Congregationalist minister, Albert Bailey, who was a British hymn writer, and really a great pathbreaker in his tradition of hymn writing. And actually is in our hymnal. We've sung it up here at the church. And so I sent that. He said, this is the one I'd like to set. And he did that in the spring. And before Fred sent me the music in the summer, I had been thinking about the text and also about its potential dedication. The phrase, do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God, always brought to my mind Josephine McFadden. And when I came to MAPC in 2005, Josie had already clocked in 45 years as a professional volunteer member of the staff, having held down many administrative roles. She ran all the databases, and she was the official institutional memory for so many things. And her dogged, selfless devotion to the church, but also to the vulnerable and the needy of society and of our city through many organizations she supported and worked with over the years, really made a deep impression on me. And Josie was quiet, but she was also persistent, and whenever she encountered examples of the unjust, the unmerciful, and the unhumble, she could be a bit of a tyrant. So I asked Fred to include a dedication at the top of the piece which reads, commissioned by Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church, New York, New York, in memory of Josephine and McFadden. And so we're pleased, I believe, that Josie's sister Lucy and niece Whitney are planning to be here at least for the service. Nice. So I'm pleased that they will be here, hoping to be here today as well. And so I'm pleased both MAPC's name but also Josie's name will probably make its way around the world, at least to Paris, and other faith communities, and so we can bring those words from Micah to life in a choral and spiritual musical setting. So please join me in welcoming not just the choir, but Fred Gramann.
Thank you. I will have you know I only speak when I have a backup choir. So, no, it's wonderful. The first thing I would like to say is to express what a really singular honor it is to have been asked to compose an anthem for this very historic church. It's really, really touched me. Both Nancy and myself are honored to be here, to hear such an amazing choir sing it, and to hear it accompanied by a musician of the caliber of Andrew, who's just a spectacular organist, as you know. As I was thinking about how to speak to you about this, I decided that I would do it as I compose it, actually. When I compose a choral anthem, it always starts with the text, because the text can actually a rhythm, it can infer the high note of happens begins first. And then I'll talk about how that is reflected, how it influences the music that the choir sings and that the organ plays. Now, Andrew spoke a little bit about the text. When he wrote me, it was actually May 28th, 2019. It made no impression on me whatsoever. You can see, inviting me, I was just actually stunned and excited. He sent, as he said, some texts, some different options, which were taken from the readings for today's service, and his first choice happened to be also my first choice, which is the hymn he mentioned by Albert Bailey, who was it was written in 1949 and is based on Micah 6-8. It was part of a set of hymns that were representing Old Testament prophets. Now, I know you know this, and if you were at the first service, you heard it, and at the second service, you will hear it, because it's the end of the Old Testament reading, but I just want to read it for you so it's fresh in your mind. Will the Lord, I'm sorry, it's 6. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now, I have to be humbly honest that when he sent the text by Albert Bailey, I really knew nothing about Albert Bailey. So I read about him. He lived from 1901 to 1984, and he was really responsible in the United Kingdom for a hymn-writing movement that, among other things, was very concerned with social justice. And the hymn actually has 5 verses. I only used 3 of them, but I'd like to read you all 5 so you can get the full impact of what he was doing in his hymns. So this is the full text of the hymn by Albert Bailey. What does the Lord require for praise and offering? What sacrifice desire or tribute bid you bring? Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Rulers of earth, give ear. Should you not justice know? Will God your pleading hear while crime and cruelty grow? Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Masters of wealth and trade, all you for whom men toil, think not to win God's aid if lies your commerce soiled. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Still down the ages ring the prophets' stern commands. To merchant, worker, king, he brings God's high demands. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. How shall our lives fulfill God's law so hard and high? Let Christ endue our will with grace to fortify. And notice the change in vocabulary. Then justly, in mercy, we'll humbly walk with God. So that's the full hymn. I don't know about you, but I don't know many 19th century hymns that challenge presidents of countries, kings of countries, those with huge financial assets, those who employ hundreds of people under them, or the people under them, which is kind of interesting in a hymn text. And to all of those situations, he applies the three-step answer. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. I decided to use just 3 verses for the simple fact that I like those best, and also the commission was for an anthem that would be between 2.5 and 4 minutes. because they wanted a piece that could be used easily within a church service, and when you go way beyond 4 minutes, it's hard to sometimes program that in a worship service. So this anthem is actually 3.5 minutes. So, you know, in France, they can talk for about an hour, and then they play the pieces 3.5 minutes. So this is kind of what you're getting. be patient. Good. So the next step for me, once we had the text, once I knew how I wanted it to be, is to choose how to actually form it in the piece. I decided to take the do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God, and make it into a refrain. So it actually begins the piece and is in between each verse and ends the piece. Okay? Then I decided to use the first verse, the last verse, and then the second verse, which is the one about rulers of earth. So that I had a skeleton for my piece. Then I decided to think, well, what are the words that could be represented musically? What would influence? What could I glean from the words? And there were three that worked for me. One was humbly, walk humbly with your God. So I kind of thought about humility, humbleness. What is a humble person? What's a humble piece of music? The second one, was walk humbly with your God as an action kind of word. And the third was grace, that unmerited gift from the Holy Spirit that gives us the energy to do what we need to do, what God's will is. So, first word, humble. I decided to think about what is a humble piece of music. And so I wrote the theme of the piece, which is the refrain, thinking that some of the definitions I like of humility are simple, unassuming, and especially teachable. How can a piece of music be teachable? How can it be humble and grow? So I'm gonna have the choir sing the different refrains through the piece, just a cappella, so you can hear it. So this is the first time the refrain comes in. This is the theme you'll hear a lot. So you just give an A. Do justly. Ready? And. Do justly, love mercy. Good. So there's the first half of the theme, okay? How is it humble? Well, the rhythm is pretty simple. It only uses 4 notes. And do you notice how they're singing? What style? It's totally unison. They're all together. It's very humble. Okay, this is the second half of the theme. And walk humbly with your God. So you hear the whole theme. This time, the second half, it breaks into 2-part writing where the sopranos sing the same thing as the tenors and the altos sing the same thing in the basses. So there's 2 parts, but it's still fairly simple, and it comes back to that same note. Okay, so here's our humble, hopefully humble theme. Okay, the next time it comes in, listen to what happens to it. Ready? And do justly, love mercy. 1 and 2 and 3. Yeah. Okay, so our humble theme has grown. Now each voice part has their own line. There's a soprano line, an alto line, a tenor line, a bass line. Yet they're still working together. They're still serving each other. But the theme is learned to branch out, to be more independent. Okay, here's the third time the theme comes in. Listen to see what happens now. Ready? So what happened that time? Do anybody know what kind of form that is? It's simply a canon, okay? The women started, then the men answered. The women teach, and the men learn. There you go. Yeah? Something like that. Something like that. Okay, but so they become more independent. The theme is more comfortable with itself. The women can sing, the men can sing, but yet they all come back to that unison note in the end. Good, so the final time the theme comes in, listen to what happens. See how it is teachable. See how it's learning by being a humble theme. You good? Ready, and go. 2 and 3 and... Okay? So, what's happened here? How is it learned? How is the humble theme been teachable? The voice parts are now more florid. There are more notes in it. Did you notice anything about the melody? It's no longer obvious. It's no longer just in the soprano. It's actually, all the melody notes are there, but they're being passed from voice to voice. Okay? So our little theme, our humble theme, has learned that it can trust, that it can move throughout. So you have the humility represented by this theme. So now, what does the organ do amidst all this? First of all, it plays the theme all by itself in the beginning and mirrors it all by itself at the end of the piece. Okay? So my second word was walk. How can you get action? Well, thankfully, the Baroque period came up with a great answer, which is called a walking bass. It's a bass line that is continuous. The notes are continuous. It's kind of like feet walking along, walking bass, which often outlines the harmony. Okay? So I'm going to have Mary's being our pedals today down here. Can you just play the pedal part? Ready and go. Good. So there's our walking bass, providing that movement. Now there's a little bit of symbolism in this too. When music, it first, of course, started out as a single line, and then they had organum with 2 lines. And when they started having chords, the root of the chord, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, the do, was representing God. It was the alpha, omega. Everything started there. It ended there. It was the foundation. And the fifth was often Christ on earth, or sometimes human beings. Okay? So what I did was have God be represented in the low note, and us as human beings on the upper note. Listen once again where they fall in the measure. Ready? And go. God, us, God, us, God, us, God, us. Now you may notice that God is on the beat, and we are off the beat, okay? But we are following humbly, okay? We are following. We're doing our best, okay? One thing that I know about humility is you need to know that we are not God, right? We are humbly following God, okay? Good. Then, what about, we've had God, we've had Christ, we need the Holy Spirit. The last word I mentioned earlier was grace. Grace, Holy Spirit. Again, the Baroque period came up with a wonderful representation of the Holy Spirit. In Bach's Pentecost cantata and in his big organ chorales and the Leipzig chorales, which deal with Pentecost, the Holy Spirit, there's a continual 16th note line as if imitating small flames. So this is what the organ does. Andrew, it's your turn. Ready? And go. And so you have the Holy Spirit working up there. Okay? Good. So in a minute we're going to go through the whole thing, and I'll tell you as we go through it, remind you what's happening. But a couple of other things I want you to know. In music, as it started out, there were no measures or bar lines. There was plain chant, whatever. But when it started to be grouped into regular groups of notes, into measures, they had the first time signatures were kind of interesting. When there were groups of 3, it was represented by a complete circle. It was completeness. It was the 3 like the Trinity. It was called tempus perfectum, the perfect tempo, okay? When it's in groups of 2, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it was an open circle, okay? It was called tempus imperfectum. It was imperfect, okay? So whenever you hear the theme, which is the perfect theme of do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God, it's going to be in 3. It's going to be perfect. Whenever we're talking about rulers of earth, what should we be doing, what's going on, it's imperfect. So the piece goes back and forth between 3/4 and 4/4. One other last thing to know is that after the organist plays the very last theme on a solo stop, there's a chord at the end. There's a low note, God appears, and there's also a chord on a stop that's called voix céleste, which is a celestial voice. So you have Yes, heavenly approval at the end. You won't hear that here because he can't do that on the piano. A voix celeste is actually, there are 2 pipes for each note, and one of the pipes is tuned a little bit out of tune, so there's a wave, and you'll hear that on the organ at the end of the service. I'm sure you've heard that song before. So, you know when you watch a DVD of a movie, and you can have an option of having the director of the movie actually tell you what's going on? That's what's about to happen. Okay, all right, so we're going to go through all the way through the piece, and I will explain. All right, are you ready? Okay, there will be a test. All right, okay. So, we have the theme. Ready? And walking bass. Enter the Holy Spirit. First theme, humble. Trust in the mercy. Now the first verse, we go into 4/4. What does the Lord require? What does the Lord require? For praise and offering. What sacrifice desire? What tribute did you bring? Refrain, which has become more. Trust me. Now this is verse 5 in Bailey's text. How shall our lives fulfill? How shall I fulfill God's law so hard and high? Let Christ endure our will. Let Christ endure our will. With grace to fortify. The refrain, women beginning. Last verse. Rulers of earth, should you not justice know, with God you're clean, while crime and cruelty grow. The last refrain. Just me. Voila, and there you have it. So, yeah. I think the choir need to get organized. Are you? We got time? Okay. seat. Totally open to questions. If you have any questions. Yes, sir.
What did you envision with some reverberation, say like St. John the Divine? Have you ever heard it with reverberation?
Have I ever, what did I consider if a church is very reverberant, lots of echo? I've not heard it that way. In fact, I've only heard it on Thursday night rehearsal for the first time with a choir, which was upstairs where there is a little bit of a reverberation. I think it would enhance it, even so, because it's it's not a piece that's super fast, it's not super bombastic, it's supposed to be humble in nature, so I think the acoustics would also help it too. But it works beautifully upstairs.
When you take it back to Paris.
When I take it back to, I'm going to get your address and I'm going to let you know. Or you can come hear it. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
In the creative process, how long would you say you spent thinking about it, and what was the most difficult part about how to bring it all together?
In the creative process, what do I think of? What was the most difficult part? The most difficult part is like doing a work of art. I was talking to our lady here who's a painter, and it's like you're in front of this blank piece of paper, and okay, what do I do now? And I start very simply. Actually, I wrote it like I talked about it. I simply wrote the theme. I played around on the organ, what sounds beautiful, what that kind of a thing. I think, I'm not sure which was the most difficult part, to be honest.
Start?
Yeah, I guess just the start, yeah. For me, I'm a composer almost out of necessity when there's a purpose to write something. So often it happens okay, but I can't just turn it on. But in this case, the text was so beautiful that it's kind of lent itself, gave me some ideas. Anybody else have a question? The choir can have questions too. Yes.
What came first, the organ or the composing? Or did you have you doing both of them? I mean, did you start composing later, or were you always composing from a very young age?
Okay, did y'all hear the question? Okay. No, I did not compose from a very young age. I went to university and did organ performance degrees. And somehow I had the perception that you don't even mess with that field of composing. That's for people who are going to develop a new harmonic language, a new scale, a new form of music, and it was almost off limits. That was my perception. And it wasn't until I went to the American Church in Paris. Anybody been to the American Church? Yeah, okay, yes, okay, good. And when I started there was 1976. My office had a desk, a pen, and a piece of paper. Well, there was a lot of paper. In my office, there was no phone, there was no typewriter. It was typewriters back then, right? Okay, there was nothing. So if I wanted to order a piece of music, I had to go down to the secretary and ask when I could use her typewriter. I would type a letter, I would send it to the States, it took 7 days. They would answer back with how much it would cost. We would get a check from the church, we would send it back for 7 days, and they would take 2 months to order it, and then they would ship it by boat. I mean, that's really what happened. So when there was something coming up like, we must have something for this, I would, oh, well, okay, I'll do this, I will try. So I'm kind of a reluctant, accidental, necessity kind of composer. That's how it started. I do a lot of composing also for handbells. I love doing handbell pieces, composing and conducting for that. And it was the same thing. We were the only handbell choir in France in a church. I mean, actually the only handbell choir in France when I started. So obviously the music stores did not sell handbell music. Okay, so Fred had to write some, And also, I must say, I didn't feel like I'm worthy of composing, but I just did it. The first time I actually conducted one of my pieces with my choir, I kept my head down the whole time. And when it was over, I said, okay, now put that away and take out. I was so afraid of what they were going to think about it. But I'm a little bit better today. I look at the choir. Good. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, I just wondered how you creatively did, like, you had the place of God, music for God, and then the Holy Spirit especially, which was very exciting to me, is the people, right? Is the Holy Spirit within the people, or the Holy Spirit that is...
The Holy Spirit being the medium that brings that as the piece says, fortifies our will so that we can actually follow through, that unmerited kind of
It's
grace.
so dramatic. It's just absolutely so beautiful.
Well, thank you. It
Really.
kind of came from also, the American Church has also a beautiful 8 and 4 foot flute stops, so it's just kind of a natural thing fooling around. Also upstairs, the Castellan organist does it beautifully, so yeah. Well, I'm glad you like that, so. All right, who else is going to be daring? Yes?
So you started this piece in May 28th, or this past year?
In 2019, yeah. The first time I got the email was, I still have the emails. It's framed in gold, but yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, was May 28. And so then we started the process of discussing texts and things, and over the summer so I think I sent it to you in September or somewhere there. Sometimes it happens really slowly, sometimes it happens fast, and it just happened to go very quickly. So there you go. So I was able to send it to a publisher in the meantime, and it was accepted. So it will be published. It's great. Yes.
I always feel this church is Vaughan Williams' church, and now I don't know, people may disagree with me, but in any case, I always thought he wrote very beautifully about, sort of in a somber way, about the carnage of the First World War and towards the Second World War. And I felt a lot of those qualities in your piece, but interestingly, today, we're such a clashing world. It's almost, and I just wondered if you found a little almost conflict between the beautiful, very humble piece you're writing and the way we act in the political, spectrum, here kind of went on.
Yeah. Humility is not easy, is it? It's an ego battle, Am I going to put on a face like I know everything, or I'm going to be honest and say, I don't know anything about this, teach me, okay, that kind of a thing. And I don't know if you noticed in the piece, but every time the word humbly comes in, on hum, there's a clash of notes, there's a dissonance, but they dissonance and then they resolve. So the humble word is there's also that little bit of pain and then resolution to kind of represent that. So, yeah. Yes.
This isn't really a question, it's just a comment. And listening to you, I learned so much, and it just made me wonder how much I'm missing without any formal musical training. That's a pretty piece, or, ew, I don't like that bit in the middle, but it's a nice ending. So thank you for this little bit of education.
You're welcome.
She wasn't talking about this piece. She wasn't talking about the middle of this.
No, any piece. Any piece. I just know if I like it or not, without knowing all the elements that go into making that.
Yeah. To be honest, you don't need to know any of this, any of what I've said, to actually be moved by the piece, hopefully. I mean, you can hear a piece without knowing anything about it, and it can still reach inside. But it's like anything else, a movie when you know about the actors or the plot or how any kind of thing where you have some background, you have something to latch onto, and you can appreciate it even more. So, when you go to see a piece of modern art and you go, what? But then you explain, oh, okay, I get it, that kind of thing. So, yeah. So don't worry, there's still time for you. You can Yes, Beverly.
Again, I'm not sure if this is a question or just amusing, but I'm thinking about, spending one's entire adult life in Paris. And what an amazing environment in which to be a musician and a creator of music. And I'm just wondering, would your music be the same if you'd spent your adult life in New York City? And I don't know that there's an answer to that. I'm just wondering how much the environment influences your music.
Two answers to that. Number one is, if I lived in New York City, I would have gone to the music store. I doubt I would have composed. I sincerely doubt it. So yeah, having lived there without access to music, I got into it, and people said, this is good. Oh, really? Okay, yeah, okay, well, I'll do some more. Yeah, that's really good, and that kind of a thing. But also, yes, living in any culture like New York City, I mean, my wife and I have been walking around just, looking at the brownstones, and everything is so beautiful. And Paris is the same way. We always say it's like walking through a museum. My normal daily schedule, I get up really early, like 5 o'clock or 5:30, and I always take a walk. The American Church is right on the river, right on the Seine River, right across from the Bateau Mouche, which is the boat ride between the Eiffel Tower and Napoleon's tomb. And I'll walk down the river all the way to Notre Dame, and before the accident, I would sit in front of it, just kind of meditate. And then on the way home, I would wind my way through anywhere that I seem to want to go through these small streets and just put on my radar and look at the beauty, look at the how some anonymous sculptor had made this gorgeous door with wrought iron, or a plaque on the wall that Fauré wrote the Requiem in this building, or all that kind of stuff. So yes, that really feeds me. Our son, who was born there and grew up there, was involved in architecture, and he became an architect. He was really interested in design, and I don't think he actually realized how much he was affected by it till he moved to the States, and then all that beauty and all that form and whatever. So yeah, it does have an effect, and the food's not bad either. So I should say that you are certainly welcome to come visit us at the American Church in Paris. It's an interdenominational Protestant church. We have the same hymnal that you have, so you'll feel very much at home. And we have something like 50 different nationalities there in the congregation, and somewhere around 30 different denominations. So it's a very, very interesting church. The activities of a huge Filipino population, a huge African population, lots of refugees. There are people there from fairly wealthy people to people who can't go back to their own country because they will be killed. I mean, so it's that range of people, so it's a really interesting place. And it's also a place that's much like you in that we're very concerned about the community, with your housing of refugees 6 nights a week, or in the basement of the building next door. We have a program called 100 Nights of Welcome, where we have a gymnasium under the sanctuary and house refugees or homeless people or whatever for 100 nights from December 1st through March, something in there. So it's a church that's very concerned about the community. So it's much like yours. In fact, we were almost litter mates. You were founded in 1834, and we were in 1857. We would have been more with you, but we had to wait for Napoleon III to approve that we could have a church. Seriously, and there were 2 stipulations. The services had to be in English, and we couldn't evangelize the Catholics. Interesting, yes? So anyway, so any other questions? Yes?
Are you going to make a recording of this?
Are you going to be recording the piece during the service? Do they record during the service? Oh, you will be doing it? Wonderful, yeah. In fact, I was going to say that I don't know if I would be glad to propose this to ECS Publishing. If your choir wanted to do the demo recording of it, I bet they would be most welcome to have that. So,
Make it good, Ronald.
well, you might have to have a professional recording session. I don't know. But anyway, we could talk about that. Yeah. So. Come on, choir. No questions back there.
I just wanted to comment that hearing you, Fred, talk about your piece, just as a singer, we rehearsed it, on Thursday, but it's very instructive for me to hear what you talk about, because so that's why the run Andrew's playing, and it meant more to us. I mean, it was Kathy, I guess, that asked the question from the congregation that. It didn't detract, it just adds to my appreciation of the piece, knowing more about how your process.
Yeah, great. So you're going to sing better at the service then? You'll sing the right notes. All right, I like it. Anybody else have a question?
Can we do it one more time?
You want to do it again? Without narration? All right, sure.
I'm sure you know this, but you have an amazing music program, choir, choir director.